Hi everyone, this is Paul here from the Magdalene Centre. Today I'm doing an astrology report for the month of May and about some of the key themes taking place during the course of the month and a few of the important dates where the key events are taking place. I'm giving an overview of what it all means. Before I do that, I just want to clarify, as I always do, that the astrology doesn't control our lives. It gives us a framework to help us understand what is unfolding around us. It helps us to recognise where the opportunities for growth lie, but from there it's up to us to take advantage of them by taking action. And it's also up to us to take responsibility for how our lives unfold and making sure that our actions are guided by wisdom and not just egoic desires. Now, in terms of May's astrology, the overall themes for this month are more around consolidation of the work we've already started. So, whereas April had a lot of changes in it and several planets turning retrograde, May doesn't have anywhere near as much activity in that respect. So this is more a month of getting acclimatised to the changes and stabilising everything down. So getting the changes implemented correctly and then establishing solid foundations for our forward momentum. So we have this, initially the Sun is going to be in Taurus up until the 21st of May. So this is a time for us to be focusing on developing the kind of steadfastness or perseverance necessary to see goals through to completion. Because whilst so the goals may have started or they may have gotten off the ground, quite often during the course of pursuing a goal, we hit a point where the initial enthusiasm and motivation wears off, and then we've got to keep pushing through in order to make sure that the goal doesn't just fizzle out. So this is what the Sun in Taurus brings us. It's about that stabilising everything through being committed to doing the step-by-step goals that need to be pursued every single day to keep progress going. For example, down here at the allotment, if we don't make sure that the crops are watered and we don't make sure we remove any of the weeds that are growing in between them, now that the crops are sufficiently out of size where we can determine which is a crop and which is not, if we don't do these necessary tasks to keep the area free of weeds and to make sure the plants are getting the water they need, then whatever crops we get at the end of it, or whatever fruit we harvest, will not be as good as it could be if we are committed to making sure that the areas are freed of weeds so that the nutrients aren't being divided between what's the crops that we're growing and the weeds growing amongst them. And if we don't water them, then the plants can shrivel up and they won't have enough energy to produce fruit. So this is a key time which really can determine how far or the extent of the fruit that we'll harvest at the end of our goals will be, because if we're not committed to them, if we don't persevere with the day-by-day actions needed to sustain them, then either the goal will fizzle out altogether, or the end results that we want will not be as good as what they could be if we were committed to it. So this is a key theme for the first 3 weeks of May, is having that perseverance to overcome any lazy tendencies, overcome any inertia towards doing what we know we should be doing, and staying committed to keeping the same consistent actions necessary to sustain the goals, and to make sure that we don't allow laziness or distraction to get in the way. Because one of the things with Taurus is it's about that capacity to enjoy life, to appreciate the simple pleasures in life. But one of the things we need to be careful of is that we don't become attached to these pleasures to the extent that they become a distraction to what truly matters. So it's having that capacity to appreciate what we have, to enjoy the simple pleasures in life, but not become bound to them. So it's having that sufficient detachment in how we approach things so that we can enjoy life, appreciate what we have, but not tie our identity to it to the point that we create suffering for ourselves through being attached to immediate pleasures, if you like. Because if we allow ourselves to indulge too much in the more sensual side of Taurus, we become too focused on the physical senses and immediate gratification, to the point that the goals that will bring us long-lasting satisfaction as opposed to temporary hit of pleasure, they suffer, and we don't get that true sense of fulfillment that we can get when we accomplish a goal in the long term. So, but if we can overcome any tendencies towards laziness, stubbornness or inflexibility, and embrace any necessary changes at this time to keep things going, and be willing to change any habits that undermine our efforts, then this will help us out going forwards. And it's also, Taurus is about understanding the organic cycles of life, that everything has a natural time and place, everything has a certain flow to it, and we can't make goals happen faster than they're supposed to. So why stress ourselves out about it? This is a time to kind of slow down and learn to enjoy the process of pursuing the goal, as opposed to stressing about the end result, because at the end of the day, life is not a destination, it's a journey. And this is one area that, if we operate at the higher levels of Taurus, this can really help us with this key lesson in life, that if we can enjoy the process of nurturing our goals and making sure that the key steps are taken every single day, so having that patience, perseverance and that consistent action needed to support things, then we can achieve a lot in life if we have these qualities about us, and we're willing to avoid indulging in sensual pleasures. We just appreciate them, but we don't get bogged down in them. And on the 21st, I mentioned, this is when the sun changes signs. So the sun went to Gemini on the 21st for a month. Gemini is all about perception. It's about to some extent it deals with communication, but the thing with communication is, before you can communicate something, first we have to perceive it, and then the mind has to convert that information into thoughts, which then are converted into words. So the most important part with Gemini is about that perception, and Gemini is the twins. Now that often gets misconstrued as too much focus on duality, yet duality is a part of it, and there can be a tendency to stereotype it as two-facedness. But if you think about it, with the benefit that twins have is that two pairs of eyes can see more than one pair of eyes. So it's the capacity to see two different points of view simultaneously. So one of the things that Gemini needs to, or when we're going through the Sun's transit Gemini, one of the things we need to remember is that we don't have all the truth. We don't know everything, and if we think we do, we are deluding ourselves at the end of the day. And when we think we know everything, we stop learning. So with Gemini, Gemini is like the student, and it's important that we maintain that curiosity of the beginner's mind. So it's remembering to always be open to new information, no matter how much it may threaten our current understanding, and it's not be too eager to make information match a certain picture, if you like, or weave the information in a specific way. It's learning to allow the information to show us where the truth is, rather than trying to fit the information to our way of seeing things. And one of the ways that, and the thing with Gemini is also, we all have perceptual biases. So what I mean by this is that we all see the world slightly differently, and the world that we actually inhabit is the one that our minds are creating based on interpreting the information coming in through the senses. So as such, none of us see the same world exactly the same. We all see things slightly differently, and we all have certain biases where we see some areas objectively and clearly, and other areas we see things distorted because of our biased perceptions. So this is what communication is all about. Communication is about removing these biases so that we can see things as they are, not how we think they are. So the most important aspect of that then is to do our best to speak the truth as best we know it, and listen to the other person. It's important that we engage skepticism as well, so it's not just blindly believing anything and everything. It's important that we apply skepticism to information, because if information is false or is based on illusions, then it will not stand up to the light of truth. But if we're not willing to open our minds to new ways of seeing things, then there may be important aspects of the truth that we are overlooking that cause us to see things in the wrong kind of way, and therefore our choices become marred down by dogmatic thinking. And it's also with communication, one of the things we need to remember is right thinking and right speech. So it's all well and good speaking the truth as best we know it, but it's also important to remember that wherever possible we need to try and make sure that our speech is guided with compassion, so we say things from a position of kindness, not about bashing people or mocking people, being contemptuous. It's about being open-minded and not being attached to any one view over another, so that we can see how everything is actually interrelated and see how everything is just different strands of the same picture. But it requires us to be open-minded in order for us to do this, and it also requires that we be committed to being as honest as we can in our communication, and also be honest with ourselves and recognise that we don't know everything, so we need to keep our minds open for new information that could potentially transform our current understanding. Because ideally we want to bring that mental model of the world that we're living in into alignment with the actual world, so what we see and how we perceive it are one and the same. So it's about that learning to be completely in the present moment. So when the mind is still and we can just be in the world and see everything as it is, without having to analyse it, without having to compare it, it's just being in the here and now is the ultimate objective of Gemini. It's the capacity to align our mental understanding with the world itself, so we see things as it is, and this then allows us to achieve that mental peace and the capacity to see things as they are and see the truth in any given situation, and to be living in the present moment. Now, in terms of the other aspects taking place or the key dates, the first one will be on the 3rd of May. So this is the only one involving a major change as such behind the Sun's movement. This is Lilith is moving into Pisces. She's been in Aquarius for the last 10 months or so, and this has been a time where there may have been an exaggerated focus on future thinking or originality, and in some cases it can be an obsession with freedom, if you like, to the point where relationships that could actually nurture our growth or help us to grow further can end up being burnt without really thinking about the long-term implications of it. So that exaggerated need for freedom can cause us to harm budding relationships or budding friendships that could have actually helped us. But that's just Lilith in Aquarius. Lilith in Pisces, this is a time where we may experience very powerful flow of inspiration, of intuitive perceptions and psychic sensitivity, but it's very important that we have a healthy outlet for it. If we either obsess over it or if we try to deny it so that it's not given an outlet, it can lead to major distortions. Pisces is mutable water and is the sign of the two fish. One is looking at the material nature of everything, the other is looking at the spiritual, but they're tied together, so they can't separate. We have to understand that the two are related. Spirituality and the material world are interrelated. They can't be separated as such. But if we can remember this and we can be open to new kind of information or intuitive perception, and also to obviously maintain connection with the world around us, then this is a time where we may have very powerful inspiration, very strong psychic sensitivity and very powerful intuitions. But on the negative side, there can be a very powerful focus on escapism if we don't allow a healthy outlet for this kind of energy. And with it being Pisces, which is water, this can manifest as a bit like seeing everything through water and not taking into account that water diffracts light. It changes the angle where things appear to be, so what we see and what we think we're seeing are no longer aligned. There's distortion here, so we only see what we want to see, which can lead to an almost insane level of naivety or self-delusion. So if we want to avoid this during the next 10 months where Lilith is transiting Pisces, then we need to have an outlet for all that psychic sensitivity, whether it be through arts or healing or service to other people in a way that channels that energy, because Lilith is very impersonal. To channel Lilith's energy in a healthy way, we have to have an impersonal outlet, so it's channeled for the good of everyone else, and it's not just about selfish needs or trying to inflate ourselves at the expense of other people. So in some respects, Lilith is very much like Saturn. The next event along is going to be the new moon in Taurus on the 4th, so this gives us an opportunity to focus on setting intentions around Taurian themes. So it could be that we want to incorporate or develop more patience or perseverance. It could be that we recognise that we have a tendency to be very stubborn and pig-headed, as it were, and this then obviously prevents us from forming healthy relationships or healthy connections with other people. It's also, we may recognise that we have a fear of change, despite the fact that change is the one true constant, as paradoxical as that sounds. So this may be time where we choose to learn to go with the natural changes. It may also be a time where, if we're generally cut off from nature and not feeling very grounded, we may decide that actually it's time to work on our connection with nature, to spend more time in a natural environment, which is very beneficial to the health of the body. And it's also about potentially seeking to more consciously enjoy the simple pleasures in life. So rather than taking things for granted and always pursuing sensual appetites and seeking pleasure at the expense of worthwhile goals, it's about having that balance to appreciate what we have, to enjoy the fruits of the spirit, and not try to claim ownership over what we have in life. The next event along will be on the 18th. This is the full moon in Scorpio. So this particular full moon is obviously balancing the Taurus and Scorpio polarity. So both deal with resources, as it were, but whereas Taurus is personal resources, Scorpio is more about other people's and our capacity to share them. Scorpio is also the deeper level of realities. Taurus is a very surface level kind of science, about enjoying the physical side of things and enjoying the immediate and the sensate. Scorpio is more about going in much deeper and going inwardly. It's like emotional security as opposed to physical security. Now, for that, we have to do that for ourselves. So this involves going within ourselves and cleansing out old emotional patterns or old emotional complexes based on old hurts, and using forgiveness as a tool to transmute those attachments and to shed them, so that we become internally empowered, and from that position it becomes a lot easier to try and share with people. So it's about the capacity to share what we have with other people in a way that not only empowers us but empowers the other person in the process. Obviously it requires discernment at the same time, because not everyone has that kind of mindset, so not everyone will be prepared to operate in that kind of way. So it's having the discernment as to who we can share our resources with to achieve more, because this is about the capacity to share what we have to achieve more than what one individual can achieve alone. And it's about the shedding of attachments and illusions that keep us playing small, and it's about learning to see not just the surface level reality but the deeper undercurrents, and understand our own personal motives for doing things, understanding our own personal shadow. Because the more we understand our own shadow, the more we understand the shadow of others, unless we're triggered by it, because we've deactivated our own personal triggers through accepting our own shadow. The final aspect, because we've already covered Sun's transit through Gemini starting on the 21st, the final date will be the 30th of May. This is when Pallas Athena is turning direct again. She's been retrograde in Libra since February, so this has been a time for us to try and focus on balanced interaction with other people. It's also about balancing the yin and yang within us, achieving an internal harmony between the two, because the thing with Libra is it's all about seeking that harmony, that balance, that justice, but we can't achieve it if we don't first create it on the inside. So this has been a time for us all to work on balancing our inner masculine and feminine. It's about seeking to be just in our interactions and seeing where the wisdom of using tact and diplomacy in order to attain certain goals, rather than trying to steamroller over everyone else in the desperate urge to get what we want. So this has been kind of cautioning us or reminding us it's important to respect the needs of other people and to not do things at the expense of others. It's about the wisdom of diplomacy and balance, and seeking to take a balanced approach to everything in life, so we don't create increasing polarization within ourselves and within our environment as a result. So it's bringing the two sides together and allowing them to operate in harmony so they complement one another, because they are, masculine and feminine are ultimately about complementing each other, not trying to antagonize. So if we're experiencing it in an antagonistic way, chances are we're out of touch with either one of them within us. Because if we're in touch with our own, both our masculine and feminine energies, then we're less likely to experience conflicts with people who embody the opposite energy to what we embody, as it were. So it's about balancing the two. With Palace Direct, this is time to make sure that we're applying it in our lives, because it's no good if we've learnt information or got knowledge through it if we don't actually apply it. Because if we don't, we've just wasted the opportunity. What was the point in learning that if we're not actually going to apply it in our own lives and seek to embody that kind of wisdom? So I hope this is a guide for the month of May. As I said, this is predominantly a month about consolidating the growth that we've already achieved. It's also keeping our approach to things open to change, but staying committed to the path of growth that we're pursuing. And it's making sure that we overcome any tendencies towards laziness or procrastination that would cause us to abandon the goals in favour of immediate gratification. Because only if we can delay our gratification long enough for the worthwhile goals to achieve, that we can achieve a true sense of self-respect and sense of satisfaction born out of the knowing that we were able to see a goal through to completion. We didn't take any shortcuts, we didn't allow laziness to sabotage our efforts, and we sought to enjoy the process and at the same time. Because the more we can focus on the process and appreciate it and enjoy it, that we maximise the amount of knowledge and wisdom that can be gained through the pursuit of the goals. Because if we're obsessed on the end result to the detriment of the process, then we severely limit the amount of practical wisdom and knowledge that we can gain from the goals. Even if we do achieve them, we may not gain as much wisdom as if we learn to appreciate the different nuances of the tasks and processes involved. Because the more we know the processes and learn to apply them in various ways, the more easily we can attain goals in the future. So it requires less effort to achieve the same goals going forward if we make sure that we learn as much as we can from following the organic processes and seeking to align with the natural process of growth and renewal. Because if we're going with the natural cycles, we experience a lot less stress because we're no longer trying to fight to make things happen at the wrong time. Going with the natural cycles allows us to become more grounded, to be more connected with the natural cycles, and to feel that sense of peace and contentment and serenity that can come through being completely grounded and present and spending time in nature, where we all which our bodies naturally need in order to be fully grounded and in order to feel more present in our lives. Nature is a major balm to the soul, as it were, but for whatever reason many of us have lost connection with it, and as such we're disconnected from how to the natural cycles, and we used to try and fight to make things happen, which is going against the natural order and causes more illusion than it's worth. So may bring you many new insights, much growth, and the stabilisation of the goals that you're already pursuing. Take care and be blessed.